Good morning, crypto Twitter, it's Misty Crypto, spreading crypto adoption, showing its benefits to my generation. Shout out to all my people, Jesse needs to be included, it's really that simple. We are savage, amazed, boss, SD, making money at the same time, spread peace. I feel empty if you don't include Gen Z, about to change the world, so y'all better get ready. Misty Crypto, I'm never backing down, I got a wax account, you should say it out. So many NFTs, I think I lost count, and I'm only getting started. Yeah, I'm barely off the ground. Misty Crypto, you cannot stop me. My hands are made from diamond, your hands fall like origami. Never be the boss of me. Bitcoin's all I need. When I say I'm zesty, that's just me talking honestly. Crypto and yum bomb marketplace. I wanna see the more we gotta go through cyberspace. Leave this world without a trace. Say pay for a different day, cause we partners in the cryptos didn't stay.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Miss Teen Crypto Show. I hope everybody is having a lovely Friday. And yes, I said Friday because we're celebrating the end of the week. We've worked hard to get to this point where we could sit back, chillax, and take in the zest. If you guys are new to the channel, what's up? My name is Randi, also known as Miss Teen Crypto. It's nice to see you. Make sure you like, subscribe, and also share out the stream with more people so everyone could join in on the fun. Thank you to everyone in the chat that came. Much love to all of you. Before we jump into today's really awesome guest, we're going to say thank you to our sponsor, Wax Blockchain. They're absolutely killing the game. I'm going to waste no time today. I'm jumping in. Today we have Dan Nathan. You often see him on CNBC. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Randy. It's my pleasure to be with you on Miss Teen Crypto.
Man, I've been watching you for a long time. I really love what you do, and you're always honest. You're always going to say what you think and what's going on in the market. Always very straight up. But I want to get to know you. I feel like a lot of people want to get to know Dan Nathan, who's the guy we watch every day on TV, right? So let's start in college. What was like a college Dan Nathan up to? What did you want to do with your life?
I was probably like a Randy back in college. I was just couldn't wait to get to it. You know what I mean? The things that really interested me. I mean that sincerely, when I was 19. And so, I was kind of into my studies. I actually picked up political science, which I was just interested in, and I was interested in politics and policy and that sort of stuff. But I was also really interested in markets. And, I started working for a stockbroker while I was in college, a couple days a week. I did that my junior and senior year. And I worked for a bond brokerage firm for 2 summers while I was in there. So I just caught the market bug. And I think that's probably what happened to you over the last couple of years. And so for me, it was just kind of a combination of kind of doing well enough in school, right? So the parents aren't yelling at you. I was also playing lacrosse back then. And then really just kind of leaning into the sort of things that interested me that I thought would be a big part of my life as a professional once I got out of college. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And, a lot of people don't really think about that. A lot of kids that are my age are in college now. They have no idea what they're going to do when they get out. They're not even thinking about anything besides like what frat they're in or a sorority and what they're doing next weekend. So, you actually thinking beyond that, I think is really awesome. And so you were in school for political science. What interests you about politics? Why was this so intriguing to you at such a young age?
It's funny. I mean, back then it was the early 90s and Bill Clinton was running for president when I was in high school. And I just remember taking political science classes my freshman year and finding the political process of getting elected really interesting. That's really, to me, the first time I was like, oh my God, this is like real drama, like going on. And then, throughout the 90s, there was such a backlash towards him and his style of politics that it really became like kind of hand-to-hand combat, if you think about it, between the parties. And it was almost like ground zero for the environment we're in today. But then as I got older, and, it's interesting as you get a career and you have bills to pay and you are thinking about how to make more money. And then you start thinking about having a family. you really start thinking about, how does tax policy affect me? How does local politics affect where I live? You know what I mean? Like, all of it is kind of intertwined, and for people who are not paying attention, you're probably not doing your part as far as a democratic society that we live in, right? Because this is like, for the people, run by the people, all that sort of stuff. And for people who love to just bitch and moan on Twitter about that party or that politician or that policy they think is unfair, and they're not going out and voting, and they're not taking an interest in this sort of stuff, well, they're not doing their part, So for me, it's just always been of interest to me. And, as an adult, I feel like we have a greater responsibility. And I think hopefully, younger people today have this more tools at their disposal to really get to the truth and figure out what's important to them and how they can become, a bit more active in the process.
I think, social media has really brought upon a big revolution in terms of communication, but also in politics. I mean, social media is kind of running the political landscape at this point. People refer to Twitter for news. People are always looking at TikTok for news, which is crazy. But I don't know if you're really active in the TikTok space, but TikTok is becoming a huge search engine for the younger generation, even though a lot of it isn't filtered, so you don't know what's real and what's not. But how do you think that's changed? The political landscape between when you were younger and kind of my generation and social media. How do you think that changed?
Well,
that?
you know what? I mean, listen. I say this to young people all the time. People coming to me for advice about the business that I'm in, or and listen, man. It used to be that you'd hear this thing where adults would say, "There's nothing but there's no such thing as a dumb question." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But back then, and to find out, something that you didn't know, you had to find somebody who knew something about it, or you had to read in a book that might be out of date or something. It was just really hard. And now I would say, it's there's no such there are no smart questions, because everything is at your disposal. You can figure out what's going on real time. You can kind of get to the bottom of things. You can access people. You and I met over Twitter. We DM. I'm on your program right here. You know what I'm saying? Think about 20 years ago, before mobile and social and all this sort of, it would be almost impossible for us to connect like this. You would have to figure out where I am, or vice versa, and it would probably be deemed a little stalky, if you will. You know what I mean? So, I just think that, again, there's nothing that you can't learn as a 19-year-old who is really interested in crypto, or really interested in markets or macroeconomics or whatever. It's all out there on the internet. You just have to be really disciplined and kind of, just kind of ask the right questions and seek, seek truth, I guess, if that makes sense.
Seek truth. I really like that. That has a nice zest to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we have everything at our disposal. And it's so funny, because even in high school, I noticed a lot of kids, even though we could Google every single question, the teacher would tell you, go Google this for your homework. And kids still didn't even want to do that. So even with everything at your disposal, people still don't do that, which leads to your point into discipline and having that self-discipline. You coming out of college, you were kind of ready for the world. How did you build in that self-discipline? Where did this kind of come from for you?
Well, it's funny, a lot of careers, and again, my first job when I was 23 or 4 in the business, really, after college, was on a trading desk. And just, there's something about being in a business where there is a mark to market, where every day you have a report card, right? There's a scoreboard there. And so, again, there's lots of ways to put up numbers, whether it be in sports or whether it be in trading or whatever. But to do it consistently, you need to have a process, right? And so if you don't have discipline, you don't figure out a process, you are really focused on not making the same mistakes over and over again and learning from mistakes, if you don't do that, you're just not going to make it, right? And so, I started again 25 years ago in the markets, and, 90% of the people that were probably my contemporaries coming from where I came from, doing the job that I was doing in the late 90s, they're not doing it anymore. And it's not that I've outworked them or this and that or whatever. I've pivoted. I'm doing a different thing in the markets than I was doing, or that I thought I'd be doing at this point. You know what I mean? But I guess the point is that, you can't, be a wilting flower in a business like this. You have to be able to take criticism. You have to be able to learn how to take chances and not be afraid to make mistakes, and then really just kind of come up with a process that's repeatable, that's disciplined, that has a sort of risk managed approach to it. And that, to me, I think is one thing that I say to people all the time who ask me about investing versus trading. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And they're two very, very different skill sets. Both of them take a certain amount of knowledge about the underlying that you're looking to, kind of trade or invest in. But, the way you manage risk is very different. I'm going to give you a good example, okay? So, last week, Nike was trading at $98, okay? This stock was down at that point 40-some% from its 52-week and all-time highs.
Wow.
Now, there's a whole host of reasons why that's happened, okay? If you think about, there's strain on a consumer. They sell a lot of their goods outside the U.S. The U.S. dollar is trading at a 20-year high. Supply chains are disrupted. Inflationary pressures are really prevalent, right? So input costs, right, to make their products and sell them. So that means their profit margins are less. China has been locked down. Europe's in a shooting war. These are big regions for them as far as sales and future growth. So like a whole host of things, are weighing down on the stock. Well, last night they reported the number was fine. The guidance was bad. They're showing margin pressures, high inventories. Today, as we speak, the stock is down, 12%. It's trading at $84. So I first bought a portion of a position. I talked about it on Fast Money. I said I'm very likely to be able to buy this with an 8 handle, meaning in the 80s next week after they report. I have no idea whether the stock's going up or down 10%. This is just my hunch based on pattern recognition, the stuff that I do or whatever. So my point is I bought some at 98, and then this morning I bought some at 82.5. Well, now it's at 84. I've created an average price in this stock that's $87 now. I first bought it at 98, okay? So think about this. You could only do this. I don't know. Could the stock go to 78? Of course it could. Could it go to 68? Of course it could. Could it go back to 108 in a week? Or 2 or 3? Sure. My bet is that over time, it will go higher. So I'm averaging into a position. Now, somebody could just, turn on their machines and look at FactSet and get their, trading app and say, okay, the stock's down, been cut in half in 9 months. I'm going to buy it here. And they could buy the low. And 3 months later, they could be selling it up 30 or 40%, right? Would that be luck? If they had no experience, of course it would be. But the more you do this, the more process you build into it, the more you think about risk management, and the more reps that you have doing it, then hopefully you can create some sort of repeatable behavior. And so that's what I've tried to do over my time. I can tell you in 25 years, I have seen Nike probably come in 30% from an all-time high 10 times. You know what I mean? Like, it happens. And then the stock goes back up eventually. Now, there's stocks that you will try to do this with. I don't know. I'll throw out a name. Maybe it's Snapchat. Okay. I don't know. Do you use Snap anymore? Maybe not. Maybe one of the reasons why this stock is down 80% is because teens like you, they're not talking about crypto on Snap anymore. They're not sharing selfies. Who knows, right? Yeah. But their numbers aren't great. So if you try buying it here, and I'm long it, I bought the stock, it's down 80% from its all-time highs just last year. Might that company, might that stock go to $3? And I've been averaging in the whole way from 10. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, that wouldn't be a great trade, but there's not as much history in this name, for instance, than as it relates to my history with Nike over 25 years. Snap went public 5 years ago. I hope that makes some sense. So you got to figure out pattern recognition and really just kind of experience trading in very volatile environments.
Yes, because, I understand, because it's kind of the same with, like, in crypto. Like, people try to say, like, oh, Bitcoin's going to a certain price, but you don't know. Like, even with stocks, like, you don't know. And then there's kind of like this degeneracy that kind of comes in where people are, like, saying they're investors, but they're just straight up gambling. So how do you kind of like, especially when you were younger entering the stock market, how did you kind of just, like, cut your losses sometimes, or kind of like pace yourself in terms of what you were investing in, or when you were shrugging that line of being a little bit of a degen?
Yeah, I love the Degen thing. That's something that, I think I said Deegan on one of my podcasts once when I had like Meltem Demers on and she made fun of me. But, listen, I think that what you're explaining, and you came into this market now in the last couple of years, and there's a reason why people your age are really interested in it, because it represents something different than, let's say, the stock market represented to me when I was your age. When I was 15 years old, I didn't know anything about the stock market. It was 1987, and there was a crash. And I just remember hearing Wall Street crashed. And it was like on the main news, and there was no internet. And then you had to wait until the next morning to see a newspaper. And if you probably Googled the Wall Street Journal, October, whatever the date was in 1987, I'm sure that cover will come up. And I'm sure a lot of people who were in the stock market remember it like it was yesterday. It was a panic, And so, the stock market, there's been booms and busts, but there's thousands of stocks. You know what I mean? In the stock market, you're now in a market where a lot of people in your generation, where crypto represents something very different, right, than their parents' investment. And I get why that is interest to you. It's also the way you access the markets. It's also what you think the community around these projects, the reasons why people are buying, let's say, a crypto token. It could be an NFT. It could be one that's used for payments. It could be whatever. I mean, I get all that. And so I think you're probably in the very early stages of something that, has the ability to gain some traction. The things that you are most convicted on right now in crypto might not be the things that win out, that really get it to the level of adoption where it's a mass sort of thing. You know what I'm saying? And I think at your age, and some young people who are just now new to markets or new to an asset class like crypto, you don't have the experience to see the ebbs and flows of these periods, you know what I mean, of excitement over a new asset class and then the bust. This term crypto winter is a funny one, because, people will tell you who've been around since the early days back in 2010, well, we've had 5 crypto winters and this and that, whatever. But here's the thing, okay? What are you willing to risk? How long are you willing to stick with it? Do you still have your laser eyes on your Twitter thing? Are you still hodling? All that sort of stuff. Isn't it interesting that most of these crypto influencers don't have their laser eyes anymore? Some of them have taken Bitcoin and the cool little hashtag all together out of their bios. Well, what is that telling you? And so here's the thing. If you're convicted, you keep doing the work, you keep figuring out what's changing, you keep figuring out who is this meant to disrupt, right? And what is the opportunity set? And how can you participate in this community? How can you network? How can you continue to find out what are the best things that are going to be sticky in this, that, whatever, and then you have to use some risk management, right? Because the problem that I have with crypto in this latest sort of craze is that the promise was always institutional adoption, right? And you're seeing all of these organizations that have created, rails in which institutions can invest in custody and leverage and hedge, and the list goes on and on and on, right? But it really was the excitement by retail investors that was putting it on the main page every day, right?
Yeah.
Because and then all these different new applications with smart contracts and NFTs and all this sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, so many people were drawn into the excitement around it, right? Because of social, because of community, because of spaces and shows like this. And I'm not blaming anybody for anything like that. But the retail who came in is like, I want to be a part of that. And they did it at Bitcoin 60,000. Well, they're getting killed. And so, you know what I mean? And if they bought it the whole way down, the way I just described buying Nike from 98 to 82, and you don't have the capital to risk, right? You got rent to pay, or you got tuition to pay, or whatever the heck it is, healthcare costs or whatever, and you just plowed a bunch of capital into the speculative asset in an asset class that's not proven over time, and you're stuck. And now you got to make a decision. Do I take the big loss, or do I wait it out? And, if the history of this asset class shows that waiting it out could take years, you know what I'm saying? So, and then some of these things just go away, right? Like, think about how many people who might have had profits in crypto and then move them into an NFT project that spoke to them, that they felt like it was culture. They felt like it was part of the community. And that is more illiquid than the crypto token that they originally made the money in. So they moved it. It would be like taking money that you made in the stock market in a very illiquid or a very liquid market, right? And let's say you had, a $50,000 gain in a stock portfolio, and you just kind of sold it all really easily, one click, and then you took it all and then you put it into a very illiquid asset, a house, apartment, or something like that, right? You pay all the fees associated with doing that, and then you wake up in 6 months because the housing market's down, okay, and you need that money to do something. You're stuck. I mean, you're gonna, you know what I mean. So I think that's like a pretty decent analogy to think about, the sort of money that's flowed into this asset class and the money that was made, the money that's lost, and thinking about liquidity is really an important thing. And you got to think about time horizon. And, my good friend Brian Kelly was just on my podcast, OK Computer, the other day. He wrote a book on Bitcoin back in 2013. It was published in 2014. It was called The Bitcoin Big Bang. But he has been steadfast, and he does Fast Money with me, about that most investors should have 1% to 5% of their investable assets in this asset class. If you do that, the alpha that will be generated in a period where it goes up a lot will be really good, and hopefully it'll diversify against some of the other assets. But if it goes to zero, it won't hurt you that much,
Yeah, I don't think Bitcoin's going to zero or anything like that. We have had some bear markets in crypto, but in the stock market, people are getting quite wrecked as well. And we do have to fight this urge to not be a degenerate and just like being able to stay concurrent in your beliefs. And if you exactly, you kind of made a good point. Like crypto, you got to wait a few years, but also sometimes that could happen with stocks as well. Like you got to just hold your position. And hodl and just stay in your convictions. But when did you I want to just dip into what you're doing right now with CNBC. How did you transition into working for CNBC? How did you start in television? Because I know you said at the beginning that wasn't where you were actually picturing yourself going. You pictured yourself going another route. How did this kind of merge for you?
Yeah, 100%. Well, during the financial crisis back in 07, 08, and early 09, I was at an investment bank, Merrill Lynch, and I was trading a proprietary book. I was focused on long-short equities, which I'd always done, but also trading equity options. And so during the crisis, Merrill almost went under. They weren't having their people proprietary trade anymore for a whole host of reasons. Wow. And so I was looking at going back into the hedge fund business, and I got a call from a headhunter, and they said, hey, we have some opportunities as far as hedge funds. They're always looking for good traders, and whether it was good or not is another story, but we'll save that for another podcast. But they said, hey, this is totally out of left field, but CNBC is looking to staff a show on options trading, and really wants to be focused on the equity markets, like the reasons why someone would buy or sell a stock or an ETF, but use options to express those views. And it sounds like you're on an equity derivatives desk, and your background says on LinkedIn that you were a long short equity trader, PM at hedge funds, that sort of thing. So at the time, it was late 08, the financial world was falling apart.
That's a crazy time to start.
Right. And I basically said, I'll give that a shot. So I went there, and I did a screen test for that with Melissa Lee, who's been the host of Options Action. That was the show since it started in early 09. I started doing it in early 09, and I stopped doing it at the end of 2019. So I did it for 10 full years. And I've been doing CNBC's Fast Money. I started doing that in 2011, which is just kind of like the post-market show, talking about what happened in the market, what might happen the next day. So for me, it's been kind of fun because I've stayed in the markets. I trade actively. I'm always looking at stocks. I'm looking at the macro. Now I have this business with Guy Adami, who's a good friend of mine from Fast Money. We started it a couple years ago. We have a couple different podcasts. One's called On the Tape. We do that with a guy named Danny Moses. We do OK Computer with a bunch of people in Web 2 and Web 3. And then we also have what we call a market call. We do Monday through Thursdays at 1 p.m. live, the same way you broadcast here. And Guy and I have a bunch of really good guests, and we talk markets real time. So, we're doing all that, and we're keeping busy in the markets, and we're talking about it on TV, and we're talking about it on the web, and we tweet a little bit. So that's how it all happened. Here we are, all these years later. So.
Thank God you stuck with your social presence. Just gonna say that. A lot of people, I notice, like anchors and people like that, that are on TV, don't follow with their social, and you have done a really good job, you and Guy, of doing that. I know Guy isn't like much like as heavy on social as you, but Guy's still a cool dude. I really like him. Hopefully, we'll see him here soon. Wink, wink.
Oh yeah, I'll you know what, we'll get him on Miss Teen Crypto.
No, Dan.
No, Guy, Guy has some really interesting thoughts about like Bitcoin, and he thinks of it very much as like, an asset class, that is just like most major asset classes, 100% affected by what the U.S. Federal Reserve does and doesn't do, and as long as they remain with this kind of tightening bias, he feels that it's going to be under pressure, but I'll let him explain it a little bit more to you when he comes on.
Yeah.
But the minute that the Fed pivots and goes from this really hawkish monetary stance to dovish is when Bitcoin is supposed to work again. Again, I have no idea one way or another. I'll just say this, is that if one of the pillars of Bitcoin was an inflation hedge, right? One of the pillars of gold was an inflation hedge. Well, we just had inflation at 40-year highs, and readings that are not really letting up. So why aren't these things working right now? You know what I mean? That's a real problem for this. And so that's a test that needs to kind of bear itself out over the next year or so. And let's see how it acts. Let's see how low it goes on the downside, and let's see where it finds a bottom and for what reasons.
Yeah, I mean, man, gold is kind of like not doing good at all. And, I heard someone on CNBC say the other day that like gold was one of the worst, asset classes right now because it's just underperforming and it's not what it's supposed to do. And I'm a little upset about what Bitcoin's doing as well. But again, it's this market kind of has a lot of blood in the streets. Bottom line, a lot of people got hurt. Stock market, gold, like real estate, even in some places, just being crushed. I mean, do you see a bottom for this market anytime soon? Like, where do you see the markets going? Can we survive this? Are we going to make it, Dan? Are we going to make it?
We're all going to make it here.
Let's go. Okay.
Randy. All
That's
right,
it. We can end it now. We're all going to
No,
make
but
it.
here's the thing. I mean, I think that as long as, and I've felt this way about crypto, I've been in the markets for 25 years, both public and now, just gotten to know the tech VC community and a lot of people in the Web3 community over the last few years. And, some of the smartest people that I know in finance and tech believe what you believe. They believe that this is an asset class that's here to stay. Some of the innovation that's happening in and around these projects is going to be just unknowable as far as what the opportunity set is, right? And the disintermediation of some of these big platform companies and all that sort of stuff. So I believe that. I'm just not smart enough, and I'm not involved enough to kind of know where to place the bets. For me, I always thought Ethereum was really cool because, if anything, I thought Bitcoin had a bit of a branding problem, right? It was called a currency, but yet no one uses it to really transact. Do you transact in Bitcoin? No. Why would you do that if you think it's this valuable, scarce asset, right? Like, why would you transact in it? So.
Exactly.
But then on the flip side, Ethereum is these smart contracts where, all of this really cool innovations being built on top of it, and yet before this merge, right, you had to spend ETH, right, to create things and to transact in things. And if anything, that was a currency, right? And so people were using that to kind of, so to me, I just think it's kind of interesting. I don't get Bitcoin, and I've had the opportunity to speak with a lot of really smart people who are all in on it, and it's not the thing. I don't own any. I have owned it before. It's not something I'm particularly interested in. I'd rather buy the NASDAQ 100, the QQQ ETF, than buy Bitcoin. And I know that, well, here's the other thing. You don't see laser eyes on Twitter anymore, and you don't hear these Bitcoin people putting targets out there. You remember all those 200,000, 500,000,
people
$1 million.
Are putting out targets now for like 10K. What happens, and I think this happens in the stock market too, where, if everybody is, like Bitcoin takes a hard hit, everybody's saying, 10K Bitcoin's incoming. When Bitcoin took that dip from 20 to 3,000, people thought it was going to 800, but it didn't. It went the other way. I think no matter like what market you're in, if it's like a mass, consensus that it's going one way, then I think that's what people are going to say. And then, when it goes the other way, everyone's like, oh, all right, I guess like we didn't see that coming. I think that happens in both spaces, to be honest.
Matter of fact. Well, I agree with you on that front. But hey, listen, I think that for you, you're doing great work. You're helping a lot of people, just kind of figure out, obviously these programs are fun. You get a lot of I've seen some of the guests that you've had on there. It's amazing. And
Thank
your
you.
ability to access them is amazing. But also from an educational standpoint, as long as, a lot of it remains like this is not investment advice. I watch you on Twitter.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is kind of what you're doing, what you're exploring, what you're working with, who you're talking to. And I think that's a tremendous resource. So I think that your listeners or your viewers are very lucky to have your commitment to this space.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I basically grew up on like crypto Twitter. I started this when I was a junior in high school, 17 years old, and I'm going to be 20 soon. I really grew up on Twitter and with everybody here, and just being able to talk to people like you, and being able to see where your life has gone and how you got to this point is just really amazing to hear your perspective as well. This show isn't always about just crypto people, everybody has their own opinion, and I think that's what's important. People may not agree with you, people may not agree with me, but at least we have this platform, I guess, and being able to have these conversations in a mature way. I know sometimes people in the crypto community get defensive over the stock people, or stock people get offended by the crypto people. Let's stop this. That's not the way it should be. Let's have an open conversation. Let's be adults. You know what I mean? Dan, thank you so much. I know you're a busy guy. You got to get your day going. We've been here for a little bit. I'm gonna let you go. Thank you everybody in the chat for coming. Dan, where can everybody find you? Everything that you're doing, and do you have a message for the people? It could be stocks. It could be about the market. It could be anything that's on your heart, anything on your mind. Share with us, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, listen. Last night I was with one of my buddies, and a couple buddies, and we were in a bar and we were watching the Thursday night NFL game. And one of my friends who's been in finance for years and years, and he's really into behavioral finance, and he likes to gamble on sports games. He's a handicapper, and he had a big bet on Cincinnati covering. And it was just kind of interesting watching his emotions, standing in this bar, we're having a couple drinks, and a football game is meant to be entertainment and fun, and he's sitting there stressing out about a missed extra point, you know what I mean, and this and that, and I'm like, don't overcomplicate things. If you enjoy football, then watch football. Don't financialize it. You understand what I'm saying? And so what I would say is, and this is kind of the point I was making, is if you were invested in crypto because you believe that Bitcoin is going to change, the financial status or whatever the heck you think it's going to do, be careful of style shift, because then let's say you put a bunch of money into NFTs because you just thought it was fun and other people were doing it. All of a sudden, when it's not going up, you've taken something that was meant to be fun and you've turned it into a financial asset, right? And then it becomes risk. So do you understand the point I'm trying to make here? Yes. Is figure out how to differentiate between an investment, right, and what you're willing to risk and what the time horizon is, and figure out what you do for fun, and be very careful about merging the two of them, because if they both go wrong, then you're in a world of shit, okay? And so do you understand? So that's kind of the advice that I would give, and I think that's kind of the lesson of the last year and a half in the stock market. Also, if you think about meme stocks, the whole idea of hodling GameStop or whatever is ludicrous to me, okay? But it also applies to NFTs and some of this other stuff. And again, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in the NFT space and the PFP space, and I get why someone would want to spend some money to be part of a community. Everybody has hobbies, but don't mistake a hobby for something else, I guess is the point. All right, so that's it.
Gotcha, right. Dan. Don't be a degenerate, guys. All right, calm down.
Right. That's
calm
what
down.
I'm saying. Not, yeah. I got you.
I hate to word it like that, but sometimes that is what happens, and a lot of people get wrecked. So, guys, please do your own research. That's the biggest thing. Stock market, crypto, it does not matter. Do your own research. Don't invest more than you can afford to lose. You still got to live out here. So, guys, be smart money, and also catch up with Dan Nathan. This guy's everywhere. He has 4 podcasts. He's on CNBC every freaking day. Spitting facts with Guy Adami, dropping alpha with Melissa Lee. All of that. All really great people. Thank you again for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Randy. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, everyone. I appreciate it. See you soon, all right?
Have a great day, everyone. Stay zesty. Peace.
Peace. Thanks.
Good morning, crypto Twitter is misty. Crypto spreading crypto adoption, showing its benefits to my generation. Shout out to all my people, Jesse needs to be included. It's really that 50 if you don't include Gen Z. About to change the world, so y'all better get ready. Missing crypto, I'm never backing down. I got a wax account, yeah, you should check it out. So many NFTs, I think I lost count.